Well, hello there, and welcome to Roundtable. I'm your host, Adam Cook. This week we're going round Port Hawkesbury, and more specifically, round the Port Hawkesbury Town Council table, as we review several items that came up during the latest regular monthly meeting of Town Council on September the 5th. This includes a robust discussion on whether Port Hawkesbury should be more inclusive to all-terrain vehicle riders. And speaking of modes of transportation, I'm going to sit down this week with Blaine McQuarrie, the chair of the board for Strait Area Transit, to talk about some challenges that the transit cooperative has overcome over the past year and where community transit in our area is going in the future. But we begin with two items that have to do with tourism, not just in Port Hawkesbury and the Strait Area, but all over Cape Breton. Accommodations of a certain size here in Cape Breton Island are going to be charging a new marketing levy that's set at 3%. That's an increase from marketing levies that sat at 2 and 2.5% on specific room rentals over the past few years. The provincial government made amendments to the Cape Breton Island Marketing Levy Act last fall, and different municipalities around the island have been taking it upon themselves to pass their own bylaws to make sure that the levy now applies to accommodations of a certain size in their areas. Port Hawkesbury is the latest of these municipalities to pass this levy, so let's sit down with Port Hawkesbury Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton to talk about why the levy went through in Port Hawkesbury and where the process goes from here.
It is an incremental change, and certainly it'll be great that it will be island-wide as well, so all municipalities adopting the same bylaw will just create consistency for our visitors coming to Cape Breton Island. It certainly builds our capacity to be able to market Cape Breton Island. We are certainly on the global stage as the number one island, certainly in North America, a gazillion years in a row. So we certainly want to be at least at par with some other areas in Atlantic Canada. And, certainly it seems that there are several municipalities who have successfully approved all readings of the new bylaw, and Port Hawkesbury has this evening, and I believe there are 2 municipalities left to go.
With Richmond and Inverness counties now the only remaining Cape Breton municipalities to approve the new Cape Breton Island marketing levy strategy, Mayor Chisholm-Beaton is hoping that the reaction in these areas to the levy strategy will be positive, or at the very least will be as neutral as it seemed to be during the public hearing on the increase in the marketing levy that took place just before the September 5th council meeting in Port Hawkesbury.
We didn't have any written submissions in terms of correspondence for or against the levy bylaw changes. We didn't have anybody attend in the gallery.
Now, while we're on the subject of tourism, there's a town councilor in Port Hawkesbury that feels giving more access to town streets and trails to all-terrain vehicle users would be good for the local tourism and accommodation sector. His name is Jason Aucoin, and at the latest regular monthly meeting of Port Hawkesbury Town Council, he put forward a bylaw proposal to allow greater inclusivity for all-terrain vehicle drivers in Port Hawkesbury. It was partly the result of a request from a Richmond County ATV organization, and we know that in Richmond County, rallies and events involving all-terrain vehicles have often been a big boon, especially in the winter months, during times when tourism isn't quite as prominent in Richmond County and the Strait Area. Could the same effect happen in Port Hawkesbury? Jason Aucoin thinks so. Here he is giving his thoughts at the latest regular monthly meeting of Port Hawkesbury Town Council as to why an ATV bylaw is a good idea for the town.
So I've been approached by quite a few residents and the Richmond Riders Association to bring forth to council to create a bylaw that would allow ATVs, which are insured, registered, and operated by a fully licensed operator. By that I mean they have to have a driver's license, a full license. It can't be a learner's permit. And in discussion, we thought it would be best from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. that the ATVs would not have access to the roads. And part of that reason would be to comply with our noise bylaw. So from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., they would not be granted access to our town streets. Some of the reasons for this is it's an economic impact on the community. I've seen firsthand communities where 15 or 20 ATVs will pull into a restaurant and everybody's spending at least $50 in there to eat. Then they all go to a fuel station, get gas for their bikes. It's another $40 or $50 each. I think it would help our hospitality industry. And then when we are planning to put on a rally here in Port Hawkesbury in the near future again. And it will help the hotels. People will come stay overnight. It's really becoming a big industry. And I did pass around Yarmouth's bylaw that they are moving to their second reading on. I emailed that to council and staff this afternoon. So the province has actually put a lot in.
While Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton agreed that Aucoin's proposal for an all-terrain vehicle bylaw was worth examining, she expressed concern that the 2-week turnaround between last week's regular council meeting and next week's Committee of the Whole meeting might not allow enough time to review the proposal. In response, Councilor Aucoin suggested that the ATV bylaw proposed by the town of Yarmouth, that he referenced just a moment ago, would be enough of a template for the town to look at to try to build its own bylaw in a reasonable amount of time.
Through your worship, I believe that 2 weeks is more than enough time. The template's there. We have to change a few words. We can bring this to Committee of Whole, we present it to Council, and they'll give us our 2 weeks to advertise.
However, as Chief Administrative Officer Terry Doyle pointed out, the process of putting a bylaw together may not be as cut and dried as some residents may think.
The bylaw has to go through an advisory committee. So there's typically an advisory committee of council. That advisory committee, in this case, decision was made at the start of this term that the advisory committee is council. So there's typically an advisory council, an advisory committee meeting that makes a recommendation to council, and then that moves forward that way. Many of our bylaws come forward through planning commission. So in that case, it goes through it goes through our planning advisory committee. In this case, it will go through a committee of our bylaw advisory committee, which in this case is council members. So we would meet before any meeting, any first reading. I will say, just in a very quick look, this is connecting two pieces of trail through one piece of street. It is very different than allowing ATVs, and I certainly don't know the law around that as well. So there is some research with respect to the Motor Vehicle Act. I know it references the Nova Scotia Road to Trails Act, so we have to do some research on that as well. So there is some work to move this forward. Staff would be happy to look at this and then come back at Committee of Whole, or if we want to have an advisory bylaw committee at some point, we do that and just come with the findings that we have at that point, and then you can make your decision as to when you wish to receive first reading and actually what exactly what that bylaw will state as well.
The pathway that we've kind of mapped out here this evening is that council will come together prior to Committee of the Whole, just to kind of explore what staff have discovered over the next 2 weeks. We'll review that material and then determine next steps from there. So typically, any kind of bylaw creation or changes is certainly, has a template or has kind of a fixed procedure, which includes a first reading, a second reading, and certainly ample opportunity for the public to submit their thoughts via writing or email or coming in person and speaking directly to council in terms of either for or against the proposed bylaw. So we will definitely be following that trajectory of what we normally do for bylaws.
There is a process, and it does take a little bit of time. You have to have your public meetings and stuff like that, and hear from your public. I think from my understanding and looking across the province where they have this, I guess once a year maybe you'd have a rally or something, and it is economically, it's big. Shetty Camp, I know that it's big. And I also put, I guess talking about it was your footprint that you're leaving driving your truck or your SUV to the post office to get the mail, where if you could drive your side-by-side, your footprint's a lot less. So I look at that, they're greener, they burn less gas, and it's something that I think that we should look at pretty seriously, put this together.
Port Hawkesbury Town Councilor Hughie McDougall, seen here next to the mayor, also had some insight on the potential for an ATV bylaw for the town. He pointed out that his experience in sitting on the police commission for the Inverness District RCMP, which includes the Port Hawkesbury detachment, had included some revelations that attempts at ATV bylaws and regulation in northern Inverness County hadn't worked the way the original bylaw proponents had hoped.
We discussed this and we brought it up before at our police commission meetings. They did have issues in Shetty Camp where there was some problems. I'm not sure they had the bylaws stayed up, but I think this is a great idea, and all the ducks got to be in a row, but I would definitely support it, and it is a money maker for the town, and I think we should move this. I think it's time sensitive, and we should move it faster than slower.
Deputy Mayor and I have a meeting on the 12th with the Police Commission.
Sure.
And we can bring it up there, and maybe if they have information, they can send it to us on what they have across the province.
Meanwhile, Town Councillor Blaine Macquarie suggested that allowing more access by ATV users to town streets and trails would not likely sit well among town residents that have already complained to him about the current level of usage.
I get complaints all the time. Well, I shouldn't say all the time. I've got frequent complaints about four-wheel vehicles traveling, particularly on Macquarie Drive Extension, different hours of the evening, and not abiding, certainly not abiding by speed limits. And not that they should be there now, because we don't have a bylaw that prohibits that. But I get complaints about it. And what are the police doing about it? So, of course, the police can't be everywhere all the time.
As Councillor Macquarie did recommend, maybe we need to have a little bit more thorough opportunity to hear from the community, and he noted that and other communities have had community consultation sessions, which is a little, not necessarily part of our, typical bylaw process, but just to make sure that we are providing ample opportunity to hear from citizens, and their thoughts on what that future pathway could look like with regard to ATVs.
Later in the discussion, Councillor Aucoin insisted that his motives were to ensure that there was tight control on ATV use in Port Hawkesbury, and he insists that his proposed bylaw is not meant to provide unlimited access for ATV users on Port Hawkesbury streets and trails.
And I know that in other provinces, there's communities that open up anything that they own, they allow. Now in Port Hawkesbury, we would have to get permission for these vehicles to cross Reeve Street, but not drive on Reeve Street.
Aucoin also suggested that Port Hawkesbury could be setting trends for other neighboring municipalities. As an example, he pointed to a conversation that he had held with Victoria County Warden Bruce Morrison only a few hours before the Port Hawkesbury Town Council meeting of September the 5th.
Bruce told me today that if we were to pass this bylaw, he wants to know immediately, because he wants to do it there.
So, as Port Hawkesbury takes a closer look at opening itself up to more all-terrain vehicle users, what does the mayor think of all of this? Here's Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton speaking to Tellil shortly after the Town Council meeting of September the 5th.
So it's definitely an interesting proposition, and I'm certainly interested in learning more, particularly how the proposed bylaw could create some economic spin-offs. But at the same time, we certainly want to make sure that it's going to add value to residents as well and not cause any unnecessary hiccups or hardships. with regard to the citizens living in the town. So I know that Councilor Aucoin as well as Councilor McIver did make note of, the ability to host ATV rallies here in the town of Port Hawkesbury, which could be, a tremendous economic spinoff. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we are taking the town in the direction that all of our citizens are okay with. If the potential economic spinoff and the add value with regard to this proposed bylaw, has some synergies with citizens who, feel like they are fully heard on this proposed bylaw in terms of, what are appropriate times to accommodate ATVs. Is there certain parts of town that citizens wouldn't like to see ATV use on? So, these are all questions that we believe will be fleshed out in terms of our community consultations with citizens of Port Hawkesbury and potential other, organizations or groups, whether they are, ATV leaning groups or any groups that feel like they might have, something to lend to the discussion.
Over the past decade, some ATV events in different parts of Richmond County have attracted upwards of 300 individual ATV users on a given weekend. Asked if Port Hawkesbury could handle such traffic coming into the town, Chisholm-Beaton smiled as she recalled a 2016 concert featuring a Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter that attracted close to 11,000 people to Port Hawkesbury in one day.
Well, you do recall Megan Trainor. So we did. Yeah, there was a lot of people. There was a lot of traffic flow in town that weekend. So, certainly the town of Port Hawkesbury doesn't shy away from, being a gathering place for exciting things to happen. We're a town on the move. And at the end of the day, we do have to, I guess, weigh out that value proposition and make sure that we have a balanced approach so that we want to definitely have a thriving economic, new potential, but and also kind of maintain the economic potential and look for those new things. But at the same time, we definitely want to balance the thoughts and wishes of the citizens and also the businesses who work and, are part of that economic engine of the town of Port Hawkesbury. So, certainly the businesses and the citizens will be very interested to hear their take on this proposed bylaw.
And now let's look at vehicles of a different sort. Did you know that September marks the 15th anniversary of Strait Area Transit? In 2008, the transit cooperative set up shop in Port Hawkesbury and Richmond County, and later expanded to include Inverness County as well. The success of the past 15 years hasn't been without some challenges for Strait Area Transit. As a matter of fact, it was just about a year ago that Richmond municipal councillors aired concerns from their constituents about inconsistent service by Strait Area Transit within the county. So how has the transit organization addressed these concerns, and how is it reshaping itself for the future? To get the answers, I sat down with Blaine McQuarrie. He's a Port Hawkesbury Town Councilor, and he's also the chair of the board for Strait Area Transit. Here's that conversation right now. At the head office of Strait Area Transit at the Port Hawkesbury Shopping Centre, we're pleased to speak to Blaine McQuarrie, a Port Hawkesbury Town Councillor and the chair of the board for Strait Area Transit. Blaine, thank you very much for joining me on Roundtable today.
Thank you for inviting me, Adam. I very much appreciate the opportunity to chat with you about Strait Area Transit.
Well, let's hit the ground running. A major reason that Lil wanted to have you join us to talk about Strait Area Transit is to talk about the services that the transit cooperative currently provides in the Strait Area. So what can you tell us about the services currently being offered in Richmond County, Inverness County, and the town of Port Hawkesbury?
In Inverness County, we have a direct route from Port Hawkesbury to Inverness with, I believe it's 3 return trips we do a day from Port Hawkesbury to Inverness. And we also have what we call Dial a Ride in Inverness, where if you call 24 hours in advance, you can book a vehicle to take you individually or a number of people to appointments, medical appointments, just to go visit with somebody, and we provide that main service in Richmond County is our dial-a-ride. We don't have a fixed route in Richmond County. We have the dial-a-ride. And in the town of Port Hawkesbury, we provide accessible transportation. We do not pick up passengers in Port Hawkesbury other than those individuals that need accessible transportation because of a taxi bylaw that we have. But there was an amendment to our taxi bylaw just within the past, I believe, a year and a half that allows us to provide that service, which is a very vital service to people that have physical challenges to get around. So those are our regular types of service, but we also provide charter services as well. So we do bookings for weddings. We will do bookings for groups to go to different events. We've certainly seen an uptake in that, in the number of charters that are being booked. So I guess that's a snapshot, Adam, of the types of service that we do provide.
Macquarie also points out that Strait Area Transit has helped people get to and from work commitments, as well as providing service to the Regional Occupation Centre, or ROC Society in Port Hawkesbury. And there are also educational needs that are met by the transit cooperative.
We do transport students for the nautical school. We transport students to a Colbo Pair as well in Arishat. And we do that on a regular, consistent basis. Our service is extremely affordable. So a lot of people that are, and not just folks that have low income, but it's just an affordable option. But people with lower income, it provides ability to get out, to get to other communities, to purchase groceries, because otherwise trying to make arrangements for other types of transportation is often very prohibitive. So we talk about medical appointments, but coming for groceries is an issue. Going to the drugstore, doing your banking at the end of the month. People will use our transportation when their checks come in to do their business. So it's a very important service in the fact that it is affordable and it's accessible. So, there's the other primary issue is people that do have mobility challenges. If we weren't providing this service, they'd be extremely isolated. They wouldn't have an opportunity to get out and to do the things independently that they can do because of this service.
It has often been said that community transit plays an important role of breaking up social isolation, especially in terms of seniors. Blaine Macquarie agrees that that's the case with Strait Area Transit.
People that are in rural parts of the catchment area and are isolated, that's exactly what the service is able to do, is to provide an opportunity for socialization and getting to meet other people. And people that do use the service very much value that. So that's very important that they have that ability to get out and to see other people.
Now, there was a time not long ago that Strait Area Transit provided services for major licensed events to discourage drinking and driving after these events were over and people needed to get a lift home. So I asked Blaine Macquarie if Strait Area Transit still provides this service to this day.
We provide a service such as wedding receptions, where individuals will charter our bus or buses to transport people from accommodations to the event and from the event back to their accommodations. I can't recall that we're actually doing any sort of transportation from, if you're identifying Port Hawkesbury specifically, to other festivals and then back. My recollection is that we haven't been doing that for a while.
As you might expect, a major component of a transit cooperative that provides service to people in the community is its vehicles. So, what kind of vehicles does Strait Area Transit currently have? Here's Blaine Macquarie to explain.
So currently, Adam, we do have 7 vehicles. We have 4 Chrysler vans. And we have a Dodge ProMaster, which is, I believe we obtained that in 2020. And we have a brand new Ford Transit van that we just took delivery of in this past January. Of the 7 vehicles, 4 of them are accessible. I'm sorry, so the seventh vehicle is a small bus that we have. It's a 16-passenger bus. So that's our largest vehicle currently, is the most capacity. Years ago, the transit did operate with a number of larger vehicles, that's our current complement of vehicles at the moment.
Part of the Strait Area Transit story is the challenges that the Transit Cooperative has overcome in recent months. Only a year ago, inconsistent service drew complaints from Richmond Municipal Council as Strait Area Transit struggled to find a full complement of drivers to be able to keep the service that it was running consistent throughout the Strait Area. However, Blaine Macquarie feels that these issues have been addressed and it's turned into a positive story for Strait Area Transit and its customers.
We have progressed. We certainly did have challenges. I can think back to last fall, where at that time we were operating with 3 part-time drivers and 3.5, I guess, altogether. And that was a challenge to be able to meet people's demands when they were calling to book services, and we weren't in a position to accommodate it very often because of the shortage of drivers that we did have. And we heard a lot from the community about that, some concerns that we weren't meeting the needs. And so anyhow, since the fall and early part of this winter, we've been very successful. We've been very proactive in recruiting new drivers, and we're currently at the point where we've gone from 3 to 8. So that's very, very significant, and that means that we can provide much more service to individuals, and we're able to accommodate, I'm sure we accommodate more requests than we're not able to at this point. So that's, and we're getting a lot of great feedback from the public about that we're able to do that. And because of it, our ridership has grown. Back in January, where our monthly ridership was 294, and for the month of July, our monthly ridership was 516. So that's pretty significant, and I just think we're just going to continue to grow. There's the demand is there, and I think when people realize that your service is reliable, they will utilize it. Of course, if it's not reliable, they're not going to try to take advantage of it.
So what's next for Strait Area Transit? Well, we'll answer that question in 2 parts. In the short term, the service will provide shuttle rides for people attending a festival in St. Peter's that has grown bigger and bigger over the past 5 years.
During Pirate Days, they have events going on at 4 different venues, and Strait Area Transit will be providing shuttle service to transport people from one event location to the other. We'll have 2 vehicles down there providing that service on that day to ensure people have a means of safe transportation between each of the events. So, and that is something I think we'll be looking at doing more of in the future.
Apart from this service for St. Peter's Pirate Days visitors on Saturday, September the 16th, Strait Area Transit has some big ideas as it prepares to head into its second 15 years of operation.
I think our main objective is to see Strait Area Transit continue to grow. We take real pleasure in seeing that our numbers are going up because the demand we know has been there. There's been a latent demand, and the issue has been to be able to provide a reliable service. And that's what we're committed to do. That's why we're working hard to recruit even additional drivers. One positive thing, so we're doing this interview at our new office in the Port Hawkesbury Centre. And yes, it's been a great venue because of the walk-in traffic that we get with people that are here in the mall. But I know that we've had a lot of individuals just walk in and express an interest about driving positions. And so there's a very positive thing just by being in this location. I think the main issue for our board is to see this service grow. And, if in a year's time we're up by 200 more passengers per month, that's going to be a real plus.
Now, you just heard Blaine McQuarrie reference the board of Strait Area Transit. And even though, as chair of the board, he is also a municipal representative, a town councilor for Port Hawkesbury, McQuarrie is far from being the only person from a municipality that's involved in the operation of the transit cooperative.
Strait Area Transit is funded by the counties of Inverness, counties of Richmond, and the town of Port Hawkesbury, in addition to the federal government, the government of Canada, and the province of Nova Scotia. Our board consists of 2 municipal council reps from Inverness County, 2 from Richmond County, 2 from the town of Port Hawkesbury, and we have a representative from the Department of Community Services, and we have a community member. We have a concurrent board membership of 8.
But obviously, there's more to a community transit service than its board of directors. And as we wind down our conversation in the Port Hawkesbury Shopping Centre location of the Strait Area Transit offices, Blaine McQuarrie also wants to thank many others that make the operation a success.
Our office manager is Nicole Brion. She's really been the linchpin for us for quite a long time, and especially since she took on this position, I believe it was since back in May. And more recently, we have Joanne Wallace that's joined us as the assistant office manager within the last, I believe, about 3 weeks. Joanne and Nicole really work well together, and Nicole's responsibilities include dispatch, as well as looking after a lot of her administrative responsibilities, financial responsibilities as well on a day-to-day basis. And Joanne has come on, the title suggests, the assistant office manager to assist Nicole, and in those same sort of responsibilities. But Joanne's position is going to be part-time, she'll be working as a part-time assistant office manager. They work well together. They work well with our drivers. They work well with our clientele, our customers. We get lots of positive feedback about them, and we get a lot of positive feedback about our drivers. And I think we're just trying to be a positive employer, and try to create kind of a team atmosphere with our staff, a positive atmosphere. And I think that's been working, and I think that's part of the success with us being able to recruit and retain drivers in particular.
With our conversation nearly over, I asked Strait Area Transit Chair Blaine McQuarrie if he had anything else he wanted to add. Here's how he responded.
Well, the only thing again, Adam, is I would just want to express thank you for you coming in to gain a little bit of information, or more information about Strait Area Transit, and being able to actually put the word out about what we're providing. I should just add, before we conclude, is that we do have a discount card for trips. I believe the card is $175 for the month, and where if a person was traveling on transit on a daily basis, you would be paying $300, so it's a $125 discount. And we also have, as part of a program that's offered provincially, a fare assistance program where we can supplement trips for individuals that meet the eligibility criteria up to $200 a month as well. So again, just going, in addition to the fares, which are currently $7.50 per trip. I didn't mention that earlier, but that is what our current rate is, but which is still at times for individuals can be challenging at $7.50 because a return trip would be $15. But comparatively to other means of transportation, it is a affordable option. But it's good to know that we do have these other types of assistance to assist people as well. So again, it's just to be able to spread the message about what we're doing here at Strait Area Transit.
And now let's head back to the Port Hawkesbury Town Council table. Over the past summer, Port Hawkesbury staff and officials have been busy with several infrastructure projects, ranging from everything to paved active transportation trails to new water treatment facilities for the town. While most of these are underway and have been proceeding, there has been some trouble with a number of the tenders that the town has put out because the bids coming from companies that are looking to get these tenders have been higher than the costs the town has actually suggested. So, what to do about this situation? To get the answers, let's hear from the CAO of the town of Port Hawkesbury, Terry Doyle, speaking at the September 5th meeting of Port Hawkesbury Town Council.
So the first one is with respect to our Public Works building. As we know, the architect has been contract awarded. New building concept design is completed. There's been redesign of the old building for storage. Is nearing completion. We have some mechanical electrical issues to deal with there. In negotiations with adjacent landowner for purchase of land, so we are looking at expanding our footprint, and we'd have to take any further discussion on back to an in-camera session on that, and we hope to be able to do that in short order. We're awaiting budget pricing for removal of concrete, so if we do move forward with that, there's some work that has to be done in that respect. You'll see a number of projects that refer to it's all on water system upgrades, which is the Pitt Street tank replacement, the old tank removal, upgrades to our McDonald Street valve chamber, a number of issues. There's projects in the east. It's a very large project with a number of components. So I'll go through them individually though. So water tank demolition is complete. Pitt Street water tank project, the tank supply, we have awarded that project. We're working through logistics and timelines with respect to the building of the tank. So that we got that was the first thing we did almost within a couple of weeks of the announcement we had the money, is to get this tank order, because that takes some time. With respect to the RFP for engineering services, active transportation design, sidewalk replacement. So that work, that's the work on Old Sydney Road. So that we have design completed, tenders issued, closed, and design for future Tamarack ATV project is ongoing. So that project, unlike I think almost every one, was very close to budget. One success in tendering was around the Old Sydney Road sidewalk project. So we have tender that's close to our estimates and our budget. And just after a meeting this afternoon with some changes, we are looking to award that actually this week.
Terry, the Sydney Road sidewalk, are we looking at the Bernard Street sidewalk being part of that, the removal?
Yes, we made a commitment to council that we would look at that section of sidewalk as well. So our hope is when we have this project in place is to look at making a small extra and doing that small piece of sidewalk. If not, if the pricing is within reason on that, we'll move forward on that side. If not, then we will. That's a priority for our Public Works team.
This specific trail, designed to connect the Old Sydney Road to the Tamarack Heights subdivision near the outskirts of Port Hawkesbury heading to Highway 104, got some updates from CAO Terry Doyle at the September 5th regular Town Council meeting after councillors questioned the progress of this particular active transportation trail system.
So the design work that was a phase of the project which explained to this council that was deferred on the first year. So there was design changes that we were looking at to accommodate future development. That had changed the scope of that significantly. Yeah. And so that phase of the project was deferred, and we moved forward with the Macquarie Drive extension project in lieu. We were also able to advance a piece of the AT lane on the waterfront. The next phase of that in succession was the Eastern Town Connector. The Eastern Town Connector connects Cardell Trailer Court with Trunk 4 and improves access on Queen Street Extension. So the Queen Street Extension crosswalk, Queen Street Extension sidewalk, Queen Street sidewalk. That project, again, was over budget, was extremely far over budget. And with the flash flooding that had occurred this summer, we had more concerns with respect to being able to handle that type of weather event on the trail that was designed to go to Cardell. So we've been meeting actually over the last month and a half with the designers around that and looking for another alternative. And we're actually seeing if we can move forward on part of that project to be able to advance that. So part of it is a new crosswalk lighting and the sidewalk that will go along Queen Street. That's considerably over budget as well. So we're trying to figure out how we can, is there a portion of that we can move forward? Certainly the design of the new AT trail is moving forward on that side though.
The paved active transportation trails that the CAO is referring to in this address follow the successful completion of a similar trail along the Port Hawkesbury waterfront and the current ongoing construction of an active transportation trail connecting the Port Hawkesbury waterfront and running along Granville Street, ending up in this area, which is known locally as Sunset Park. Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton is pleased that these trails are coming together, and she's feeling positive that more can be completed in the coming years.
I have a lot of optimism about having those completed. I think when we started our term in 2020, and also that has flowed from our 2016 term as well as a council, active transportation and connecting our town in ways that allow for multimodal transportation is super important. We want to be a town that is connected in more than just being behind a steering wheel. We want to make sure that we have a healthy, vibrant town. We want to create lots of pathways, no pun intended, that provides opportunities for active transportation, whether people are walking or are, require a very inclusive active transportation terrain if they're in a wheelchair or another, mobility assisted device or if they're on their bikes or pushing a stroller. So, it's very important that we have a fully connected town. We are aware that there are some projects that we're still in the process of figuring out. The Queen Street extension, part of our active transportation plans, as well as connecting Tamarack with having an active transportation corridor to the downtown core. I think those two projects are certainly very important to the town. And we're going to continue to move forward on the connecting the Sunset Park to our current waterfront. And wouldn't it be wonderful in 2 years' time if you could just go from point A, B, to Z anywhere in town, whether you're wearing sneakers or whether you're in a vehicle or whether you're on a skateboard or wearing roller skates, pushing a stroller, or if you have any kind of mobility challenges, regardless of age or level of ability. So at the end of the day, we're really hopeful to have a very inclusive and accessible town, regardless of how people want to move.
You might remember that Port Hawkesbury CAO Terry Doyle described their latest active transportation project as being just under budget. However, this summer that was the exception rather than the rule in terms of Port Hawkesbury's infrastructure developments. As a matter of fact, the CAO told the September 5th regular council meeting in Port Hawkesbury that most of the bids that came back in on tenders put out by Port Hawkesbury over the summer had come in at a much higher figure than originally envisioned by town staff.
So we've had a lot of difficulties with tender this summer with receiving one bid. All of our tenders were over the estimated amount as well. Street line painting, that's been awarded and the work has been completed. Landry Lake Utility designed a pumping pumping and pipelines, that work is ongoing. Roof replacement project, that's the roof replacement for our water treatment plant. Again, that price was significantly higher than our estimate, and we don't have funding to be able to move forward with that. The large one is the water system upgrades. We had one bid for Island Construction. We're working with them. We've asked them for breakdown. We've been working with them for over a month on that project. We have to proceed with certain amounts of that, so we're defining what's achievable within that contract now.
We are very careful and measured in terms of planning out and budgeting our capital projects as we move forward. And certainly some of these increases were definitely unexpected, but we are, we feel the work is very important to the long-term growth and prosperity of the town of Port Hawkesbury. And as our CAO, Terry Doyle, discussed with council this evening, we're going to do our best to continue momentum with all those projects and figure out ways to move those forward. And at the end of the day, we might not be able to progress those projects as we hoped we could in this current fiscal year. But at the end of the day, we're going to see how can we continue momentum with those projects while still kind of working within our budget and also working with our funding partners as well. So it's going to be a bit of a delicate balance, but we're certainly we got a great staff who are going to come up with solutions in the best way forward.
Well, we're almost at the end of lawnmower season here in the Strait area, but that doesn't mean that there aren't still concerns about keeping grass, brush, and other vegetation in check in different parts of Port Hawkesbury. As a matter of fact, the situation's grown so serious that the CAO of the town, Terry Doyle, offered an update at the latest regular monthly meeting of Port Hawkesbury Town Council. Here's what CAO Doyle had to say during the September 5th meeting at the Port Hawkesbury Civic Centre's Shannon Studio.
There's a considerable amount, as we all know, and we looked at options of how to do that. So we talked about a motion that was made at our special meeting. I shared with you the research that was done by our staff, and certainly that brings forward more discussion. In order to kind of move forward with any kind to really define the cost of how we move forward, we have to have a discussion on what the need is. So we talked about Granville Street and being able to see the water on Granville Street and being able to at least cut what's on town-owned property. And we've had discussions numerous times on Spruce Street. We've had discussions on Paint Street. We've had discussions on Queen Street Extension, on Crandall Road. So on Old Sydney Road, and all of the other areas that are ditched, and the other parts of Granville Street that are open as well. So to clearly look at options, we want to, and costs, we really want to define what the requirement is around that.
The CAO also told the September 5th meeting of Port Hawkesbury Town Council that the town's Director of Public Works, Jason McMillan, is also checking in with other municipalities about different ways to handle gaps in mowing and mulching within the town limits.
The other thing is, with respect to the equipment, Jason has been reaching out to other public works departments around the province and seeing who's actually using these attachments and how well they use, to get a recommendation of if council wants to proceed with a mulching attachment for any of our equipment, that we'd get some feedback on what works and what doesn't.
Are we going to go ahead with that? Or are we waiting until we buy a piece of equipment, or are we going to hire a contractor to go in and do that? I think we need to make a decision on that here.
That I think can be more discussed at committee of the whole if we're going to talk about another piece of equipment. But It's probably around the same price range, and it has attachments, and it's capable of doing that type of mowing.
And we'll wrap up this week's edition of Roundtable with another look at Taylil's recent coverage of the 200th anniversary Mass that took place at Holy Guardian Angels Catholic Parish in Lordways. The Catholic Church in this community has been going for 2 centuries, and as local residents get together to celebrate, they're being joined by elected officials from every level and of all political stripe. For example, at the dinner that followed the Mass service on September the 3rd at Holy Guardian Angels Parish Hall in Lordways, we heard from Brent Sampson, who is the District 5 councilor for Richmond County and also the county's deputy warden. Richmond MLA Trevor Boudreau also made an appearance, and in the next segment you're going to see, we heard from a former councillor and warden for the area, Steve Sampson, who is the chair of the Holy Guardian Angels Parish 200th Anniversary Committee. Let's listen to Steve Sampson recount 2 centuries of ancestry, faith and family in Holy Guardian Angels Parish in Lordways.
Bonjour, bon après-midi. Bonjour. Bienvenue, tout le monde. Paroisse Saint-Ange Gardien. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Holy Guardian Angels Parish. Today, we are especially grateful for the presence of our Bishop, Wayne Kirkpatrick, clergy from our diocese and elsewhere, many whom have served in our parish, sisters from Les Filles de Jésus, visitors, friends, and families of Paroisse Saint-Ange Gardien. You are all part of the important glue which bonds our parish community as a people of faith, hope, and love. 25 years ago, Sally Ann Mumberket stood at this very pulpit and brought greetings on behalf of the parish. And if you don't recall, at that time, she asked that we pay particular attention because she said in 25 years' time, I won't be around anymore. Well, Sally Ann is still here, and she's very much an active part of our parish community. The story of the Roman Catholic parish of Lordways began in the 18th century when the area was under the general oversight of the pastor of Arishat. As long ago as 1771, a Jesuit priest, Father Charles Bailey, visited Lordways and administered the offices of the church. A mission chapel was constructed in Lordways, and spiritual affairs were tended to by traveling missionaries. The original name for Lordways was Saint-Ange, but tradition has it that Les Saint-Ange Gardien Parish was named on account of an old settlement. Many of the early inhabitants of Lordways came from France, with such names as Briand, Sampson, Martel, Fougère, and Montberquet. They arrived here as fishermen and remained to marry and have families, and so the parish grew. After writing to Bishop Plessis of Quebec in 1821, I can't understand why they didn't text back then, but I guess they made a request for a resident priest for the missions of Lordways, River Bourgeois, Descousse, and Grand-Dic. Lordways became the chosen location, mainly because it was easy to get to the lake and to St. Peter's Bay. The letter went on to say that the priest who would be arriving and serving this mission would not have to undergo a great deal of expense because his place of residence, Lordways, was out of the way to strangers, and one should be able to live here without going into debt. Lordways was made a mission of Arishat in 1820. In November of that same year, Bishop Plessis wrote to the pastor in Arishat, notifying him that he was sending a young Irish priest by the name of Henry McKegney to take charge of the mission in Lordways. Father McKegney arrived shortly thereafter, and of course our parish records show his first entry as the baptism of a Cyril Martel, son of François Martel and Suzanne Poirier. The date of entry was January the 8th, 1823, which is considered to be the beginnings of the 9th parish in the Diocese of Antigonish. Father McKegney's tenure was rather brief and somewhat unpleasant. When he arrived, the presbytere was not complete, and he chose to take up residence at the Indian Mission. In Father McKegney's words, "My early days were utmost misery." Following his departure in 1825, the bishop appointed Father Vincent de Paul, a Trappist monk, to serve the Lardouaz mission, followed by another Quebec seminarian by the name of Jean-Baptiste Poitvin. Following appointments included J.J. Trudel, Patrick McKegney, who was a brother of Henry McKegney, and Julien Courteau. Father Courteau, who was originally from Deschambault, Quebec, remained in Lardouaz for 28 years. His routine was to officiate at Lardouaz for 2 consecutive Sundays, and then would go to River Bourgeois for the 3rd Sunday. During the winter, Father Courteau would travel between the 2 parishes on horseback. In the summer, he made use of a modest wagon, which he made of his own hands. The memory of Father Courteau is still venerated, and on his grave over here, a faithful have erected a white marble monument. The original Holy Guardian Angels Church is reported to have burned in 1870. It was during the tenure of Father Joseph Etienne Etier, who was here from 1878 to 1883, that the wardens decided on the construction of a new church. The new structure was consecrated by Bishop John Cameron and opened to the faithful in August of 1888. This Gothic edifice had a seating capacity of 1,700, and the estimated building cost was just under $17,000. The man to have served the longest in Lardouaz was Father Alfred A. Boudreau, a native of Port Felix, Guysborough County. Having remained here for 44 years, Father Boudreau is credited with inviting the sisters to assist in the spiritual and educational life of our parish. Les Filles de Jésus arrived in 1943 and remained for 41 years until 1984. Their contribution to Holy Guardian Angels Parish and Notre Dame de Perpetual Secours and Lardouaz Consolidated will be forever etched in our memories. In 1950, Lardouaz Parish welcomed another great Acadian pastor in the name of Placide Leblanc, a native of Saint Joseph du Moines. While during his 16-year tenure, Father Leblanc was assisted by a number of curates who were clearly entertained by his mentorship. Father Placide was a strong proponent of bilingualism, and he used every moment possible to place priority on the importance of life success centered around being fluent in both languages. The last curate to assist Father Leblanc was Father Gerard Rogers, a native of Guysborough, Interville. An extremely popular and vibrant individual, Father Rogers was able to persuade Father Leblanc to retire, and then he became parish administrator in 1967. In 1968, Lardouaz parishioners welcomed Father Stanley McDonald. A native of Glaze Bay and one who had served earlier with Father Leblanc. It was during his tenure that the Holy Guardian Angels Church underwent a major transformation. In March 1969, the Church Les Arts Religieux of Quebec, specialists in church decor, renovated the church with an official opening in May of 1969. That undertaking cost us $40,000. Tragedy struck once again, and on the evening of April 20th, 1972, Holy Guardian Angels Church was completely destroyed by fire. Though saddened by another devastating loss, parishioners were able to continue weekend services at a newly constructed community center just across the highway. The strong faith and commitment of the parish community rallied once more, and we were welcomed into our present house of worship in December of 1976. The theme for our 200th anniversary of Holy Guardian Angels Parish is ancestry, faith, family. As we recall the history of our parish, its many challenges and opportunities, we are reminded of the strong faith which existed in our ancestors.
And there you have it. That wraps up this week's edition of Roundtable here on Telil Community Television. Thank you for tuning in, and a special thank you to my interview guests this week, Port Hawkesbury Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton and Town Councilor Blaine McQuarrie, the Chair of the Board for Strait Area Transit. If you have any thoughts about what you've seen over the past hour here on Roundtable, or you'd just like to make suggestions for a future edition of the show, I'd love to hear them. You can contact me directly. My phone number is 902-625-8863, and you can reach me at the email address adamjrcook, cook with an E, @gmail.com. You can also contact Telil Community Television directly with your thoughts and suggestions. The station phone number in Arishat is 902-226-1928, and the best email address to use is telil@telil.tv. As always, you can follow Telil on social media. We're on X, formerly known as Twitter, as well as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And our YouTube channel features every single episode of Roundtable, including this one, as well as individual segments and interviews from our shows. And we offer the same service for our sister program, Telil 24/7. For now, I'm Adam Cook. Thank you very much for joining me for this week's edition of Roundtable. I look forward to seeing you again next week with a brand new show. Bye for now.